What's going on, y'all? Welcome back to the channel. Up to me. I have a very special guest with me today, a good colleague of my wife's, Haley. She is a senior manager right now, and she went from dropping out of college to becoming a senior manager and has a phenomenal story. So I wanted to have her on, shed some light about her life. And Haley, just give us a little bit about who you are, where you grew up, and then just tell us a little bit about what drives you.
Yeah, definitely. Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me. I've never done anything like this, so bear with me.
Yeah.
Also, I'm going to put it out there right in the beginning. I feel really bad for his editor because I just had brain surgery a few months ago. And so sometimes I lose my words, or it takes me a long time to spit out what I'm trying to say because of that. So if I have a lot of pauses or am not quite getting the right word, please bear with me. But I was born and raised in the Tampa area, really grew up here my whole life in the suburbs.
Okay.
Think Fishhawk, Riverview, Plant City, kind of bounced around quite a bit, but mostly in the suburbs.
So it's completely changed from when you grew up, because...
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Like totally, absolutely, completely different. I was telling somebody recently that my very first house that I remember was in Riverview. We owned the property that was kind of like catty corner to Riverview High School, and it was a farm.
Yeah.
We lived on a farm. And
Wow.
like now that's impossible in that area.
Yeah.
Like it's all houses, it's all, built up, and, it's completely different. Fishhawk, again, we built the very first house in Fishhawk Trails. And at the time when we moved in, there were no paved roads. There were no lamp posts.
Wow.
There were no businesses, no other neighborhoods out there. It was completely empty.
Yeah.
So when I say suburb, I really kind of mean like middle of nowhere. But now, as we know, the suburbs of Tampa today, but kind of a very normal, mediocre, middle class upbringing.
Okay.
So to speak. Most of my life, first through eighth grade, went to a private Christian school, which was unique in and of itself, because my parents weren't really religious, so that was a unique choice that they chose to send me and my brothers there. And then Band-Aid ripped off, went to public school. Never had gone to a public school before.
Gotcha.
Which kind of was being thrown into society in a very interesting way, because I went to a public school out in Plant City.
Okay.
So going from like a very Christian, like unique environment to, again, now being in a very rural high school, it was a struggle, because going from Christian, I had to wear skirts below my knees and socks above my knees and all these uniforms. And now I'm in a public school and I'm way far behind just in social thinking and, education. And so that was like another really interesting transition in my life that, I had to go through, but meant that many people do. And then.
What made you make was there something that happened in Catholic school, or?
I'll probably get sued because that Christian school still exists to this day. So I won't name the Christian school that I went to. But in my opinion, they're a cult. Putting it lightly. And so unfortunately, there was just a lot of bad experiences. And, private schools are not regulated the same way that public schools are.
Yeah.
And the promise was that we were getting a better education, which, like most parents, that's their hope for their children.
Yeah.
That's the goal, is that they want to be able to provide a better education, a better future for their children. And so that is really the reason my dad chose for us to go to that school, was he was promised we were going to get a better education. But that really didn't end up being what we were given. A lot of the teachers were the children of the people who ran the school. They would graduate from the school as teenagers, 18-year-olds, and then teach at the school with no additional education or training.
Yeah.
Right. So, and it was very, very religious, very religious.
So every teaching pretty much was the baseline was from religion.
Religion.
Yeah.
And so in anything outside of religion, we weren't going to get taught about. So history was changed to fit religion. Science was changed to fit religion.
Wow.
Everything, like there was no literature, that was not something that was taught there, you know, so we weren't reading, historical books and these, books that change time and, that you learned about, in public school.
Yeah.
So forget about all the banning of books that's happening today because it just didn't even exist in my school. We didn't have the opportunity. But here we were thinking that we were getting this better education. But it kind of just got to a point where, in my generation at that time, we were starting to get access to the internet and kind of starting to be able to form different ideas outside of just what we were getting from school and our parents. And so me and my brothers were kind of fighting back a little, right?
Yeah.
And we started to rebel from what this school was teaching us, and they did not like that. So we kind of started to get in trouble.
Kind of.
Just a little bit. But also, a lot of the people who grow up in that environment tend to not be very nice people. Yeah. I'm not saying that they can't be and that is for everybody, or that all religious people are mean. I don't want to stereotype everyone, but in the environment that I was in, there were a lot of bullies, and it was really hard as a kid to grow up and be bullied constantly because I was a little bit different.
Do you think so when you say bullies, like, do you think it was more, so when I look at someone that might be over religious or over anything, honestly, just bought into one ideal, they're very judgmental. Is that kind of the bullying that you're saying, or people were just mean in general?
Both.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So, I would say it was very small class sizes, right? So like in public school, you may have hundreds of kids in your class versus in my classes, I maybe had 20. Okay. So everybody knew everybody on a very intimate level, and there was no escaping it, right?
Yeah.
And, at the time, and looking back at photos, I was not, overweight or chubby for a child of that age, but compared to the rest of the kids in the class, I was. Yeah. But what was I going to do? I was a third grader. I was a fourth grader. I shouldn't have had to think of those things. Yeah. So I was bullied a lot for that. I was bullied for not being able to have access to some of the other things that the girls' parents were allowing them to have access to. Because some girls were like starting to wear makeup.
Oh, okay.
And or my dad was weird about not wanting me to shave at a young age, like my legs. Okay. But some other girls, their parents didn't care. And so they would make fun of me and like bully me and like lift my skirt up and be like, oh, you have hairy legs. Ha ha ha. Like just things that like about your appearance that at a young age, like you shouldn't have to think about. Like I'm here to go to school and get an education and, try to make friends. And they just made it really difficult. And I remember there were times where I would just be trying to walk down the hallways and they would trip me and like push my books out of my hands and really mean girl type of stuff. Yeah. Yeah. But the same things were happening to my brother.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. There were guys who at one point he was tricked to go into a bathroom and was sucker punched. And he was one of the ones who got suspended because the other kid was like a golden boy.
Oh, hold on.
Exactly. Exactly.
So even within the religious schools, there's a lot of politics, I guess, that play.
1,000%.
Yeah.
Which family is donating to the school more? Yeah. Even though my dad was donating, you know what I mean? But still, it was like, what family is donating? What family fits the mold more? What family actually goes to the church that is affiliated with the school? We didn't go to the church that was affiliated with the school. So what was actually going to affect the pockets or the affiliations of the pastor that ran the school?
Interesting. So it's funny because you said that your parents really weren't practicing at the time, but they put you guys into school. Do you think it was like, sometimes parents are like, you know what, I want my kids to be better than what I was. I know I should be maybe a better Christian or better, steward of my religion. And they were like, so I want to raise my kids like that. Is that maybe the push that it was, or was it?
I mean, I've asked and I've never gotten that answer. Yeah. That it was had anything to do with religion. My parents have always been very much, you believe whatever you want to believe when it comes to religion, whatever makes you happy, whatever, you know, helps you find peace within this world. You know, they're not outwardly one way or another. You know, my mom comes from a very Christian home. My dad, not really so much. Spiritual, they talk about prayer, but I've never heard anybody in his family really identify one way or another. Yeah. And so for them, I don't believe it really had anything to do with religion or trying to push us towards a religion. Gotcha. It was strictly, they always wanted us to be free thinkers. Yeah. But I truly believe it came down to the education they thought we were receiving. And I think once we finally became vocal enough about our experiences and how we were being treated, not only by the other students, but by the teachers as well, they were like, okay, enough. And they were like, okay, where do you want to go to school? And they asked us. And we did. We picked the high school we wanted to go to. Okay. Granted, it was the only one we kind of knew about. Yeah. You know, at that age, like, we didn't have phones. We weren't really, like, texting quite yet. You know, we didn't really have friends outside of the school that we had gone to our entire lives. So it was just kind of like, you know, we knew a couple people in our neighborhood who went to that high school. So it was like, I guess that's where we're going to go. Our oldest brother, who had already graduated, had some friends who were still at that high school. So that's just kind of like where our journey then took us. Gotcha. But it was like the best choice. Like, I couldn't have imagined staying in the situation that I had been in at the time.
Well, good. Well, so my mother raised me never to ask a woman her age, but could you give us some insight on how old you are so that we kind of know the time frame that we're talking?
Of course. And forgive me because sometimes I forget my age.
Don't worry. Once you get past a certain point, you're like, yeah, I want to forget.
I'm like, am I 32 or am I 33? And like the last few years have been a blur. I graduated in 2009, so I was born in 1991. I'm a millennial.
Yeah, so I'm 35. You're turning 32 this year.
Or I did turn 32
Or you turned 32 this year.
Something like that.
There you go.
Yeah. Okay. Like I said, this year has been a blur with my surgeries, so forgive me. But yeah, so we're talking about, you know, the early 2000s. Okay.
Yeah. I graduated 2007, so yeah, I think cell phones were just kind of becoming a thing
my first cell phone was like the Nokia brick.
Oh yeah.
The beep beep where you could like walkie-talkie people.
Yep.
Yeah. That was good stuff. That was really the best. But yeah, so like that was kind of like the environment I grew up in, but like very kind of like standard everyday middle class. I would really say there was nothing extraordinary about it. You know, nothing like that I would say was so different from anyone else to a certain point. Okay. And then I would say that there was for sure a point that like things blew up. Okay. Which really, you know, was within like the high school years. Okay. And I think that kind of set my journey. Yeah. And that kind of is what set my paths and the choices that I had, where I could either go on this path, kind of like blue pill, red pill situation. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And kind of led me to the success that I have experienced today.
Gotcha. Okay. Interesting. Well, thank you for that. I mean, that was a long introduction.
I know,
because
I'm sorry,
no, you're fine. You're
sorry.
fine. No, because I don't think we've ever even had like that type of in-depth conversation. So it's good to kind of get that background and know a little bit more about you from that angle. So before we kind of get into like how things blew up and whatnot and just where you are today, you know, my channel is about accountability. I'm big on holding yourself responsible and accountable to your actions and it being up to you to really make something of your life. And it's all about the choices that you make that really lay the foundation on where you're going to project and go in your life. So what does the word accountability mean to you and how do you apply that in your everyday life?
Yeah. So my dad taught me accountability at a really young age, and it took me a long time to learn it. Really long time. I was stubborn, very stubborn.
Most of us are.
Yeah, it was hard. And being the youngest of 3 siblings and the only girl, it took me a minute to learn it. And I think during different phases of my life, accountability meant something different to me. Mm-hmm. And I think that that's very true for everybody. Like in my 20s, it meant something different. Now that I'm in my 30s, it means something different. But accountability to me today truly means being at peace with the person that I am.
Okay.
When I lay down at night, am I okay with what I did that day? The way that I treated people, what I did at work, you know, what I plan to do tomorrow. You know, I'm very much about the people that I love.
Mm-hmm.
And recently I've been talking a lot about, you know, you can love somebody because you're supposed to, like family or somebody that's been in your life a long time. That doesn't necessarily mean you have to like them. You know, but I want to be somebody that the people that I love like.
Yeah.
And to me, the only way that those people that I care about are going to like me is if I'm holding myself accountable to being that type of person.
Interesting. I like that definition. I like that broad scale definition of it. It really does. It makes me think.
Yeah. And I don't think accountability is any one thing.
Yeah.
You know, like, and it can mean different things at different times and within different days. You know, like, of course, we all should have integrity and we should all be doing our best to be good humans and don't steal and don't kill and like kind of like this philosophical 10 commandments that we should all be doing, right? But exactly, that's a baseline.
Yeah.
Right? And like everybody should have accountability to have a baseline.
Mm-hmm.
But I think what I've been challenging myself to do with everything that I've gone through over the last couple of years, which I think has been more than what most people experience in a very short amount of time, is how do I get to my new definition of success and peace? And the only way that I can do that is by thinking about accountability in a different way.
Gotcha. Okay.
And it's by thinking about it in the sense of accountability is just not, okay, I want to lose 10 pounds. So I've got to hold myself accountable to eating this diet and walking every day or working out every day. Like, yeah, that's great. That's a goal.
Yeah.
You know, like that's a great goal to have. And yes, you do have to have accountability to reach that goal. But our life is so bigger than that. Like, to me, I have to have a bigger goal. And accountability has to be bigger than just that. Like, it has to be about the community that you're creating.
Yeah.
And it has to be bigger. So if I want to lose weight, that's great. But what's the reason why? Is it my relationship with my body? Okay, so then I need to hold myself accountable to creating a better relationship with my body. Not just the weight that's on my body or eating better or working out. Okay, I want to reach this next promotion at work. Why? Why is that important to me? Is it the money? Is it the financial aspect? Is it the title? Okay, no. Like, I need to figure out the true reasons why these things are important to me, so that way I can hold myself accountable. And are these things feeding into my ultimate goal in life? Because if they're not serving me. And I'm not going to hold myself accountable for those things that aren't going to serve my greater purpose. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. So I think if I can extrapolate from what you were saying, it's pretty much when you're finding that, when you're fine tuning that goal or like, hey, I want to get that promotion or lose weight, you really have to get to the core of the issue of like, hey, well, why do I even want to do this? So that now once I find out why it is, and that is the thing that means it's going to be easier for me to hold myself accountable to actually achieve those things.
Right.
Is that kind of,
yeah. Okay. And a lot of times you might even find that like where you started is not truly the goal.
Yeah.
Of what you really wanted.
Gotcha. Okay.
You know what I mean? Like, yeah, you might have started with, oh, I want to lose weight. But then once you actually like dug deep to figure out, okay, why am I wanting to lose weight? Why am I anxious about this? You know, why don't I feel good about the way that I look or the way that I feel? And then you dig deep. And then once you like really get down to the core of that, maybe it turns out that, you know, you're having anxiety because you just witnessed somebody go through an extreme health crisis.
Yeah.
And it's not about, you know, truly losing the weight just to look better. but you're concerned about your health. And there maybe needs to be a more holistic way to go about it.
Yeah. No, so let's even dive more into that, because there's people, men and women, who are like, okay, I want to lose 10 pounds, 15 pounds, 20 pounds, right? But it might be to, attract somebody or something like that. And that on surface level is not going to
work.
Yeah,
you're not going to hold yourself accountable.
Exactly.
And so to me, that's why accountability can be so surface level. And that's why I've had to challenge myself. And that's how I've had to become self-aware, because I've noticed I won't hold myself accountable if I don't understand why I truly want to do something. Huh. I've continued to tell myself, I know I'm not a morning person. Anyone who knows me, anyone who watches this, they will laugh I'm a bear in the mornings. And I have been from the day that I was born. It is my DNA. And so anytime I've tried to challenge myself to become a morning person, why? Who am I kidding? Why? What is the purpose? Is it just to say that I am, that I can, that I can do it?
Yeah.
Because people kind of joke with me about it, and maybe I get my feelings hurt a little bit because I have this, sensitive nature that I'm less than in society because I'm not a morning person. And my wife can get up at 4 a.m. and work out and do all this stuff before she gets her day done. And I'm envious of that. Why? That's not my nature. And I know it's not. And it's okay that that's not my nature. Yeah. I'm not going to hold myself accountable to something that is truly not within my nature, that I know that deep down I don't want to do.
Interesting. So then how do you balance that with, okay, most jobs start 9 to 5 or whatnot. So you're not a morning person. How do you balance hey, I have responsibilities, but I'm going to embrace my true nature?
Right. So then that's kind of what the work that I've had to do to make sure that I can still get what I need to do done within my day. So I adjust, right? Gotcha. So I know that I have to be at work by 9 a.m., but I know I am not going to wake up earlier, really max, than 6 a.m. Okay. And I live an hour away from my job, but 6 a.m. is still pretty early.
No, that's
but I'm not going to be nice about it. Yeah. Don't expect to have a conversation with me.
They might need a punching bag in the room.
Don't expect to call me at 6 a.m. and we're going to talk or we're going to do anything about it. I am going to grumpily wake up and start my day and get in my car and drive to work. But that means that if there are things that I have to get done, I know that when I get off work, I'm not going straight home and sitting my butt on the couch and, melting for the rest of the day. Yeah. I'm going to have to go run my errands. I'm going to have to go do whatever that I would have done prior to work. Mm-hmm. So you have to make adjustments to be able to find that balance and that peace in your life, because there are going to be things about yourself that are just truly in your nature. And if you are trying to just adjust those things that are in your nature, then you're not truly going to be happy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I mean, I think that's valuable advice. Kind of hone in on your true nature and see how you can adjust within your true nature.
No, I'm not saying go be lazy.
Yeah.
I'm not lazy by any means. I'm just saying I'm not a morning person. I'm not going to wake up at 4 a.m. and be gung-ho about the day.
And be jipper about it.
Right. Yeah. But so I'm not condoning laziness. I'm just saying as an example, trying to hold yourself accountable for things that are truly not who you are, or for things that truly do not bring you joy or do not serve your goal or the purpose you're trying to reach, you're going to fail.
Yeah, no, that's definitely interesting, because you're 100% right, and that's probably why people do fail. It's just it's tough to balance that with any growth comes with some uncomfortability too, so it's hey, I remember when I was going through 75 hard, it was you know what? I got to get my ass up at 6 a.m. every freaking day and go and make my run or walk or whatever that workout is. But, I'll be honest with you, I'm not a morning person either. But now that I have 3 kids, that's not that. Right. That's not even an option anymore.
But exactly. But that's also why, I made the decision for myself. I don't want children. Yeah. It's not within my nature.
Interesting. Okay.
And it's not that I'm not willing to be, selfless. There have been times in my life I have been extremely selfless. I have that within me, but I just know that something like having children doesn't serve my purpose or doesn't serve my definition of success.
Interesting. So, okay. So I'm going to ask you some questions about that, since you brought up you don't want to have children. I drive my motivation from my family and everything. And
so did my dad.
Yeah. No. So your dad. And so it's just interesting because my handyman, JP, he says the same thing. I don't want kids. Me and my wife just live a great life by ourselves and whatnot. So, but then I see the work ethic. I see your work ethic, and it's like, okay, so then where do you get that from if it's not to pass off to the next lineage?
Yeah. So I'll give you a little backstory.
Okay.
About where my drive comes from. I know we've kind of sprinkled it in a little bit here and there about my dad being successful and my dad being having a really good work ethic and being a really good example. But growing up, we talked about this moment in high school where, I had a pretty normal upbringing, but then things kind of blew up.
Yeah.
My parents got a divorce, started around the time I was, 10 going into becoming a teenager, so they separated and I started living in 2 different households. And that was the first pivotal dichotomy of my life. Mm-hmm. My dad's household, very secure, had an amazing work ethic. He was working his butt off. He had started from the bottom, literally as a delivery driver, and worked his way up and was an entrepreneur, business owner, very successful, made tons of sacrifices for his family, and just grinded. And, I saw that every day, and he was working so hard to give us opportunities that he did not have. He did not have a college degree. By the time he would have been going to college, he had gotten married young, started having children very young.
Yep.
It wasn't really the plan, but it happened.
Rarely is.
Right. So, he then had to grind to then figure out how he was going to support this family.
The family, yeah.
But I saw that my whole life, him just grind. And yeah, it worked out in his favor. It rarely does, the way that he had to do it. But it did. And he became extremely successful, and he instilled that in us, and he set this plan up for us, right? To make it easy for us to become successful, and it was so funny. And we joke about it to this day, but he would drive us to school, and we had this little spiel that we had to say before we got out of the car. And it was every day. It was a mantra, if you will. I'm going to go to school, get good grades so I can go to college, grow up, be what I want to be, and have a good life. And something to the sense of no drugs and no motorcycles, because he never wanted us to have motorcycles.
That was all in the mantra?
That was all in the mantra. It flowed a little better, but it was pretty much like that. And we had to say it every single day, right? And that was our life in our household with our dad. Very structured, very calm, very peaceful, very loving. But then we had this lifestyle with our mom, which, she had never had a job. She lived off of the money that she was getting from being married to our dad for so long, and unfortunately introduced men into our lives very hard and fast and quick that were abusive to her, to us. She had substance abuse problems, would forget to pick us up from school, was abusive to us, very chaotic. Things were loud and crazy all the time, no structure, no rhyme or reason, no example, of what to be or how to be successful, or, a loving, stable environment. And I was going through both of those things at the same time.
Yeah.
As a young growing teenager, which was very confusing, and then at the time, unknowingly, the best thing that could have ever happened to me is she decided to just disappear from our lives.
Wow.
But as a kid, you don't want your parent to go away.
Yeah. So you're not thinking that at the time.
Right.
Yeah.
So you're just like,
this is hindsight.
It sucks. Yeah. Right. But then, so then I got to go live with my dad full time.
Yeah.
Which again, hindsight, probably the best thing that could have ever happened. So I got that stable environment. And again, I got to see that work ethic and, he got to instill some really amazing lessons in me. And so I think that that's where my drive comes from. And although he was always doing it for his family, the one thing he always raised me was that I don't have to have a family. Like, I am, even though I'm a woman and our society sometimes tells us otherwise, I am more than my capability of having children.
Okay.
And it is my choice if I want to have children or not. And I can have a happy life either way. And that his drive to push me to be successful has nothing to do with having a family. And he is happy however I want to be in this world, as long as I'm happy and I'm comfortable. And so him just instilling that in me, that like, to him, it was never about me doing exactly what he did or carrying out his legacy.
Yeah.
Took a lot of pressure off. And it gave me room to breathe. And that was a lot, especially coming off of like the trauma of my mom and coming out of that environment. Now, granted, don't get me wrong, there was some pressure in terms of going to school. That was like a big thing for him. Like, he wanted us to get an education because he didn't. Yeah. And that was preached to him and his generation about like how important a college education was. And he worked really, really hard to make sure that all three of his kids could go to school in terms of being able to afford it.
Yeah.
You know, so he did the whole Florida prepaid thing. Granted, like, you know, I know that me and my brother got bright futures. You know, so we didn't have to worry about how we were going to pay for college. And so that was like what we set our sights on. And with my dad being, you know, very successful and well off, he had kind of always told us, like, look, like, you graduate high school, you get into the school you want, like, I will support you through your time at school. Granted, he wanted us to have some kind of part-time job to, like, pay for, like, you know, the stuff that he didn't feel he should have to pay for, which totally fair. Like, you know, going off and doing, like, the college partying type stuff, like, he shouldn't have to pay for that kind of stuff.
I'm not sponsoring your weekend.
Correct. Right, which, fair.
It makes sense. No.
Right, you know what I mean? So
100%.
And also, like, that was just, like, his nature. Like, yes, I'm going to be here to back you up through college. Like, I don't think that you should have to pay for your meal plan or, like, your books, even though there are people who do, and I was 100% aware of my privilege and never took it for granted.
Yeah.
You know, but he didn't want us to have to worry about those things because he didn't want those to be barriers for us to get an education. Yeah. But the things that weren't barriers for us to get an education, like partying on the weekends, like, he wasn't going to pay for that. You know, so that was always the kind of dad he was, which kept us grounded. You know, so that was the plan. So as long as we did that, like, we were okay.
Good.
You know, so like, I think that is where the work ethic came from, just in general.
Got it. Okay. And so I want to take one moment just to kind of address the audience on what you said about your dad and just even you. Y'all, I think in today's age, everyone wants this instant gratification. And for you to see growth in your life, it's going to take sacrifice. It's going to take days where you're not maybe seeing the result that you think that you should have saw, or, you know, your dad started off as a delivery driver. He wasn't making close to the money that he obviously is making now, or gave you guys the life that you have. But it started with him saying, you know what, I'm sacrificing this time. I'm going to put in the work, and eventually it's going to build into something that I can be proud of. Yeah. Right. And that is the main message of my channel that I want everyone to take out of this, is that you have to put in the work. You have to sacrifice. You have to put in the time, and you can't expect to, I can't expect to have 500, 1,000, 500,000 subscribers by next week. I have to put in the work. I have to put in the time, and I got to be consistent and dedicated to my craft. So just wanted to take a moment to kind of address that, man, because I mean, what you said is just beautifully eloquently stated how it's done. Yeah. And he gave you a great example, and it wasn't like he was telling you these things and wasn't doing them. He was telling you them, and then he led by example. So you saw that example every day in your life.
And to be even completely honest, he wasn't even speaking it. He was just doing.
Yeah.
You know, and that was one thing that I always really admired about my dad is he was never much of a boaster.
Yeah.
Or even one to be like, look at what I'm doing, or this is what I'm doing, or this is what I've done.
Yeah.
He just did.
Yeah.
You know, and he just kind of let his work speak for himself. You know, and this is the funniest thing ever, and people are going to think I am bullshitting, but I swear I'm not. You know, I'm 32 years old. It wasn't until a few years ago that I even knew how successful my dad was.
Yeah.
I thought we were just, you know, like cool.
You were comfortable.
Like middle class.
Yeah.
You know, like very cool middle class, which don't get, like I said, privileged. Don't take it for granted. You know.
Yeah.
I had no idea. I had no clue because my dad just his entire life lived well below his means.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how he became so successful and stays successful and has prepared for his future and, you know, stays at the level that he's at.
Yeah.
Even now, you know, he's invested in some nicer things for himself because he has earned it.
Yes.
And he will still tell me to this day that he lives with his current expenses so far below his means, it's not even funny.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But like, even with where he's at, like he's not, you wouldn't know.
You wouldn't know that.
By just looking at him.
Yeah.
Because that's just not who he is. He's not somebody who's going to walk into the room and you're going to be like, that guy's got a lot of money. Like, it's just not who he is.
Well, that's like the book, The Millionaire Next Door. You just, these people are walking around, you don't know that.
Right.
You know, I worked part-time for a bank actually as a teller. And let me tell y'all, person that comes up in the nice car with the nice watch all the time, they might not have it like that.
No.
But, you know, the person who comes up, mediocre watch, you know, they got millions stashed away somewhere.
Yeah.
And it's just like.
Listen, if
so
my dad ever watches this, I'm so sorry for interrupting you.
No, you're good.
Do you know what shoe my dad wears just about every single day?
Converse?
Crocs.
No.
Everywhere. My brother got my dad hooked on Crocs, and it's like the only thing he wears now.
Get out of here.
I swear to you, it could be the man standing next to you wearing Crocs.
Oh, God.
And probably like knockoff Crocs, like not even like the actual ones. Like you just don't know.
So if you see someone wearing Crocs, are you Haley's dad?
Yeah. But like, it's just humble.
Yeah, no, always. I mean, I can appreciate that. It's commendable, and it takes an extreme amount of discipline. But when you have that discipline, when you're coming up to, it's a little bit easier to kind of continue to live like that because the fruits of your labor is the proof is right there in the pudding.
Right.
So. But your dad did kind of have the Shaq approach where he said like, this is my money.
Oh, yes.
This is my money, not your money.
Right. Yeah. And that was like another good lesson, you know, that I think he taught us growing up was that, you know, we were not overly spoiled children.
Yeah.
He provided for what we needed, not for necessarily like what we wanted per se.
Yeah.
You know, my dad's favorite thing to do to me when I was a kid and I was upset about not getting exactly what I wanted when I wanted it, you know, like most children get, is he would sing to me, you know, you can't always get what you want. And like, he would just keep going and going and going until I would like storm off and close my bedroom door.
So your dad was a troll too.
Oh, 1,000%. Yes. My dad is like a true dad. Like dad jokes, troll, would think it was hilarious. Like, but yes, like, you know, he worked very hard to get where he was. And although like he worked, you know, for his family and we motivated him, he wasn't about to just like let us ruin it and like let us take him for all he had and like spoil us in a sense of like, you know, we weren't going to be able to then be successful or independent as adults. You know, like just because you choose to have children doesn't mean that as adults you should have to bankroll them for life.
This is true.
You know, and that was his mindset, you know, so yeah, at a young age, it was very much so like, you know, this is my money, not yours. Respect it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, don't get lippy with me just because you think I have the money, you know, and that is why I didn't know until a few years ago really how much my dad made or like how successful he was because it wasn't something that he ever really allowed us to know. It wasn't our business.
Yeah.
What his finances were. And again, we didn't live significantly above our means. So like my very first car, again, privilege that my dad had the means to get me a car.
Yeah.
But could he have bought me a BMW or a Lexus or like, yes, he could have. Could he have even bought me like a 2-year-old, 3-year-old used Honda? Yeah. No. I was driving, let's say, okay, I graduated in 2009. I didn't get to start driving because of epilepsy until I was 17. So let's say 2007, 2008 is when I got a car. He bought me a 1996 Honda Civic. That was my first car. Right.
I can't.
But you know what? But like that is kind of how he instilled in us, like, this respect for money.
But it's good though, because now as you continue to grow, you'll value that more. If he started you off with a Lamborghini,
right.
What the hell?
Right.
That's the standard now.
Right.
That's the floor.
Exactly. But it was always this like idea of just because you can doesn't mean you should.
Yeah.
And he always taught that, like, to me. So, even when I did finally have the ability to on my own go buy my first car, just because you get approved for this amount from the bank, Haley, doesn't mean you should go max it out.
Yeah.
Don't go max it out.
Yep.
And I went and did it by myself. I said, Dad, I don't want you to go to the dealership with me. I want to do this on my own, and so, and it was just those lessons of like, I'm not going to go get the worst car payment I could possibly get just because I can.
Yeah. I think you even touched on something big that I kind of coach people on when it comes to like finances is difference between a need and a want, right?
Yeah.
And people will run into cars and, oh, I needed a new car. Okay, you maybe needed a new car, but did you need a new car that's $50,000 or could you have gotten a $10,000 car that would have got you from point A to point B?
Right.
And they get caught up in, no, I want something and I'm just going to go get it because it's triggering my emotion that, hey, I want it. I'm just going to go get it. But to your point, it's, hey, just because you get approved for a $50,000 car does not mean that you should go and run up and get that.
And it's not to say that like from time to time you shouldn't reward yourself for your hard work.
Absolutely.
However, if you're going to go buy that $50,000 car, what you need to be able to confidently say or tell yourself is this truly how I want to reward myself? Am I going to be okay financially paying this payment, knowing I'm going to have to sacrifice something else?
That's the thing. Trade-offs. Right? What are the trade-offs and what am I willing to sacrifice in order to...
Is this what I want?
Yes.
Is this the actual reward that I want for working hard? Or is this something that I want just like in the moment? Like, or 3 years from now when I'm stuck with this payment, am I going to be as happy about this purchase as I was 3 years ago on the first day? What my dad has also taught me that I thought was really important was whenever you're thinking about making a big purchase or something that's going to be a big investment or cost a lot of money or just a big risk, think about it for 1 year. If you are still thinking about it for 1 year and still think it's a good idea, do it. Take the risk. But usually within 1 year, you will talk yourself out of it or you will have found a solid reason as to why you shouldn't have done it.
Interesting.
And those are like on the big things, right?
Yeah,
and it's when like, if it's like a big business investment, that's going to be super risky and could tie up, a big chunk of money or, car that is going to tie up a lot of money for a long time and is not really an investment. It's going to depreciate the minute you drive it off the lot and you're going to have to love it for a while. Think about it and maybe not a full year, but don't rush into it.
Yeah.
Take some time to really think about it because chances are after you take that time, there are going to be red flags that pop up and you're going to be thankful you didn't.
That is solid advice.
Yeah.
That is solid advice. Wow. So take me a little bit. So your pops obviously wanted you to go to college. You did start off at college.
I did.
You ended up not finishing.
Wah, wah. Yeah.
But that didn't stop you.
No.
Can you tell us a little about, I guess, one, where did you go to?
I went to UCF.
Okay. You did go to UCF. Okay. So you stayed in Florida.
Mm-hmm.
What made you leave school? And then kind of what was your headspace, when you were making that decision?
Yeah. So I graduated high school with, honors, so to speak, glowing resume, could really go to any school in the state of Florida that I wanted to. With a lot of the trauma that I went through here locally, I thought I wanted to get away.
Yeah.
I thought, but that was a very young, naive mind.
And get away was UCF?
I know.
My bad. I got ahead of myself.
Yes, get away. Get away. What was Orlando? But granted, coming from somebody who had never been anywhere else.
Yeah. No, I get that.
You know what I mean? Like, never lived anywhere else. Like gone anywhere. I was still dating somebody locally. So, again, I don't know how in my young, immature brain I thought that was going to work. Like, going away to college, dating somebody locally. Like, listen, I know it doesn't make sense. So we're not trying to rationalize these decisions here. This is exactly why it didn't work.
Does long distance work?
No.
Okay.
In my opinion. At that age, no. At that age.
Okay.
At 18, it does not work.
Okay.
So I went to UCF and unfortunately got some really bad roommates right off the bat. Like immediately.
Just dirty or just?
No, substance abuse.
Oh, okay.
And I had already dealt with that in my past with my mom. And so that was immediately a struggle. Mm-hmm. And I once again struggled to make friends.
Yeah.
So back home, I had probably the best group of friends anyone could ever have. I am very proudly still best friends with that same group of people. Okay. Which is very rare. You know, like I think to me that is one of my biggest treasures in my life. And I think now is one of my true definitions of success, is that I have lifelong friends. So I don't know why I wanted to run from that at that age, but I did. And so trying to go out and make new friends when I had really good friends at home was a struggle. So I was constantly driving from Orlando back to Tampa, because I was lonely. I wasn't fitting into these new social groups. I was dating somebody back at home and that was causing issues because I was trying to fit into these new social groups. And then somebody at home was like, what are you doing? Who are you hanging out with? Why are you doing that? Why are you doing this? I didn't feel like high school prepared me for college. Mm-hmm. So I was struggling with my classes and I had never struggled academically before. I mean, high school was almost stupid easy for me. Like I didn't have to study. I never took my books home. I aced tests. I slept through my senior year. I didn't have, it just was dumb easy in high school.
So and you got senioritis in sophomore year.
Yes. I mean, I graduated with a stupid GPA. Yeah. Nobody told me, and this is what I think is one of the failures of our education system, but that's a whole nother tangent. No one told me how different it was when you go take a college course. Yeah. And I was in AP courses in high school, and I was acing them, and I had all these college credits before I even went to college, so I thought I was going to walk in there and it was going to be the same thing. And I didn't really need to show up to class. And when I did, it was going to be easy. And then I kind of sat down for some of my first midterms, and nothing on the test was talked about in the lectures or really in the books. And I was like, so where was this information given to us? And I was like, where was I supposed to get this? Where was I supposed to study? I was totally lost. And after my first semester, I was flunking. Wow. And I had never flunked before. And it just totally took the rug out from underneath me. Yeah. And so I struggled really hard with that. And, I started going to some parties, thinking, okay, I'm going to shake this semester off. I'm going to come back next semester and I'm going to change it all up. I'm going to dedicate myself. I'm not going to miss classes anymore. I'm going to take really good notes. I'm going to be in a different dorm room with different roommates. Like, I'm going to get away from the roommates that I had during the summer semester.
Yeah.
I'm going to make up these classes. Like, I'll be okay. And then I went to one party and unfortunately got roofied and was sexually assaulted.
Jesus.
Like, in between my summer and my fall semester. And I tried to still go back.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, because of the drug, I couldn't remember who it was.
Yeah.
And so every time I was like trying to walk around campus, it was that fear of like, they know who I am, but I don't know who they are. And it was even more difficult for me to go to classes. And then I tried to seek help on campus, like through some of their resources. And it was kind of one of those things where they discouraged me from going to the police, the campus support. And because I didn't know who it was and I wasn't able to recall a face, and because I technically went to a bar underage, like, the blame was pointed back at me from the college officials. So it kind of ended up being one of those things where, like, emotionally and mentally, I was not in a good place. And then, the people that every time I like tried to reach out for help, I reached out to the college, kind of was turned down. And please, this is nothing against UCF. I don't want this to blow up. Times were different. This was before Me Too. This is not a thing about the college. I just want to put that out there. This
Lower
has
their
nothing
enrollment.
to do with them. Like, God, goodness gracious, please.
No, the responsibilities
times were so different,
on the individual.
Right, exactly. And then, I had reached out. Me and my mom had a tumultuous relationship anyways, but I reached out to her, and like, she was not in a good place in her life still, and the blame again was put back on me. And like, she one-upped me with an experience she had in her life. And it was like, well, you didn't go through X, Y, and Z. I did. So like, you have nothing to be upset about. And then, I told my partner that I was dating at the time, and they blamed me and wanted to break up with me. And I was just like, so everywhere I turned, I was just kind of like, well, F me, man. This is awful. Like, this sucks. So it was really, really hard for me to focus. And it kind of just became like a mental block. Like, college was done for me after that.
Yeah.
It just was not possible. So I ended up dropping out. I couldn't tell my dad. I could not face my dad. Like, that was one of the things that really damaged our relationship for a long time, because I couldn't tell him why I dropped out. He didn't understand it, to your point. Like, he had worked so hard for his family, for his next generation, and his one ask of us was college. And here I was failing him with like the one ask. Yeah. And I couldn't explain it to him. And so that was like a really pivotal moment in our relationship that strained it for a really long time.
Were you just not ready because you felt it would disappoint him and he wouldn't maybe understand like the reasons why? Or
yeah, so like, I think that I went to the wrong people first.
Yeah.
And so in my mind it was, well, I already went to all these people and didn't get the support that I needed.
Yeah.
So why am I now going to go to another person who I love, who I don't want to get hurt by if I don't get the support that I'm looking for? So to me, it was kind of easier to just hurt him.
Yeah.
By dropping out and not giving him the explanation that he deserved at the time. Or trusting him to be the good dad that I knew he was.
Yeah. That's amazing self-reflection.
Yeah.
No, seriously.
Yeah. So, I like take responsibility for that because he could have handled it.
Yeah.
And I should have allowed him the opportunity. I didn't.
Yeah.
So that was on me for sure. But again, like, I'm 18, 19 years old, and I went through something traumatic. And,
absolutely.
Like, I'm a girl, he's a guy. We had never talked about sex, and we hadn't, and
if that was your first conversation,
right? That like,
yeah, I could completely understand your thought process of not like, I can't talk to my dad about
right. This. So like, he was going through his stuff, I was going through my stuff, and like, you know, like I just didn't know how to do it. And I was defensive, and, you know, it really put this wall between our relationship for a few years, you know, because all he wanted was to see me succeed, and he didn't understand why.
Yeah.
After being so successful in high school and knowing that I was capable, why I would just drop out. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So yeah, that, you know, that ended my college career, you know, and I'm not going to lie, to this day, I have a hard time. You know, people have asked me now that is out, and obviously, like, my dad and I have had that conversation since. It took a few years.
I would hope this wasn't the first.
Yes, no. He's not going to watch this and find out, I promise. No, we have had that conversation. I would say it took probably my mid-20s.
Wow.
It took a long time.
Now, was there no one, were you alone at the bar? Was there nobody else who could have, like, even...
So that's what makes it worse, is that, so we went to the bar. We were underage drinking, and it was a popular bar around the UCF area that was known to serve underage college students. Like every but I
college.
Wasn't, like, so drunk that, like, I was unaware of what was going on. Like, I was still very aware.
Yeah.
We then decided to go to a frat party on campus.
Okay.
Someone handed me an open beer. And I drank it, not thinking, you know. But again, I went to a private Christian school from 1st to 8th grade. I went to a public school in the middle of nowhere. Nobody was talking about being drugged or sexual assault.
That's not even the...
Nobody was talking about it.
Yeah.
And I, you know, so, like, yeah, I was in the suburbs of a big city, but, like, I went from ultimately Plant City, Florida to Orlando. Like, in terms of culture and, like, risks.
Yeah.
Like, that is massive.
Yeah.
You know, so someone handed me an open beer, and there were tons of people around. I stupidly trusted it. And the parts that I remember, unfortunately, there were people around, and nobody did anything.
Jeez.
And I woke up on the lawn of the frat house. Like, you know, so it was, to me, the minute I explained my experience to my dad, that tension of, like, my one ask of you as, like, you know, my daughter, of, like, this plan of going to school and, like, all the hard work that I put in, you know, to set you guys up to be able to go to college, like, all that faded away, all that pressure.
Yeah.
It all just went away.
Yeah.
And I wish I would have given him that opportunity to, like, take that burden off of me much sooner.
Wow. Well, before I even go any further, like, one, thank you for even sharing that story. I know that's obviously a traumatic point in your life, and, you know, I'm sorry that you even had to go through that, but just to even be open enough to share that with me, the audience, like, it's big. And I love it when people can come on here and just be vulnerable and talk about these things, because there's another young lady in your same situation that maybe hasn't talked to their parents about it, maybe wasn't believed, you know, whatever it may be. But you're living proof that you can kind of embrace these challenges that you have in your life and you know, move and navigate through them, you know? So, so after, you know, leaving college, I guess, what was, okay, did you and your father not talk for a while? And it was like, hey, you're out of college, you deal with it, you're on your own, figure it out.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that was pretty much the gist. Like, you know, like, kind of like I said earlier, like, as long as we were in college, you know, he was going to support us more or less.
Yeah.
And listen, my dad has always been a great guy. I'm not saying, like, the minute I dropped out of college, he was like, screw you. Like, you don't, you know.
You went to the ATM.
Like, I'm not saying I didn't exist to him anymore. You know, like, anytime that there was like a dire emergency, of course I knew I could call him. But like, he was not going to financially support me in any way, shape, or form.
You weren't just going to sit on the couch,
Right. Like, there was no me moving home. Like, I had to figure that out for myself. Yeah. I had to get a full-time job. I had to pay for my car insurance. Like, I then had to absorb all of the bills he was paying for immediately.
Yeah.
Because he said, if you're not going the college route, then you're going the job route. And you now need to pay for your life. Which that is the consequence of the path that I chose. And I fully took that on. At the time, though, I didn't take it on the way that I wish I would have taken it on. I took it on as an FU and with a lot of bitterness because I was unwilling to share why I was choosing this path.
Yeah.
And I think that I wouldn't have then had to go through the many years of trauma I then had to go through had I opened up to my dad about what was going on. Because unfortunately, like I talked about, that dichotomy of lifestyles that I grew up with between my dad and my mom, I ended up emulating what I saw my mom do to an extent. Yeah. So after that, I ended up getting in an abusive relationship, which I know, crazy, because I had just been abused. But that typically is very normal. Once you kind of start on once you've been abused, it's very easy to fall into abuse. So I got into a physically abusive relationship with somebody who had substance abuse issues and had trouble keeping a job. So they became financially reliant on me. And again, I'm 18, 19 years old. I had a full-time job at Panera. Much.
This was right after 18.
Right, I was 19. Yeah.
Wow.
So I had a full-time job at Panera and making $8.50 an hour. Woo.
And you was bankrolling somebody?
Oh, it gets worse. Yeah. So,
I'm sorry.
And this is as a supervisor, mind you. $8.50 an hour. Yes, I was bankrolling somebody. I was living on, we were living on floors of family members' houses, couches, moving in with roommates that were awful. Finally got our own studio apartment at one point, but studio, like 300 square feet.
Yeah.
But I was proud of that. And I did it on my own, so like, cool. Like that was all right. But then I don't even remember how it happened, but like I ended up getting a part-time job because like, again, our expenses were just kind of building. So I have a full-time job and a part-time job. And so I am working from about 6 o'clock in the morning, not a morning person, y'all. 6 o'clock in the morning to about 3 p.m. in the afternoon at my full-time job, getting off, going to my part-time job from about 6 p.m. to 1 a.m. Jeez. So think about that. Yeah.
Meanwhile, the person you're bankrolling is on the couch.
Yeah.
Or
right.
Or drinking.
And couldn't figure out how to get unemployment. And being abusive to me. Yep. And then at one point we're living in a trailer and I'm taking care of them, their family. And let's just put it this way. At one point we're living in a trailer. There's a total of about 10 of us living in this 3-bedroom trailer. I was the only one with a job.
What?
And I was the only one who was financially contributing to this household. Meanwhile, mold was eating away at our floor and I had holes. We would walk and the floor would fall through. Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
Well, guys, I'm hearing about this for the first
time. But this was the life I had chosen and the life I had allowed myself to fall into. I was making these choices. Yeah. And I was allowing people to treat me like this and to take advantage of me like this. Yeah. Until and because of this, right? Because of these choices I was making, me and my dad's relationship was strained. I would see him for holidays, but we weren't really talking. Again, I had kind of strayed from the path that he had so beautifully and graciously and, laid out for me. And I was so privileged to have that path available to me, and it was hard for him to see all the choices that I was making. You know, I don't think at the time he knew the level of abuse that I was going through, but I think he knew enough to not that like he wouldn't have intervened had he known how bad it was at the time, but like he just knew he didn't want to get involved because of how I was. Like, I was very defensive, and I was very like, no, everything's fine. Like, things are great. Like,
and that's when things usually aren't fine.
Right. You know what? I was very, very defensive because like I was going to make it. And like, you know, look at me. And like, I'm paying my bills without you. And da 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 da. You know, like I was very much going through like my bitterness stage. Yeah. You know, and I was looking at my older brother who was, you know, in college, and my dad was helping him, and he seemed to be having this great life, and the life I could have been having at the same exact time had I been doing what I was supposed to be doing. Yeah. You know, but
can I ask you, was there ever a point, like you're going through this point where you're in trailers, you're going house hopping, was there ever a point where you were like damn, like I know my dad could help me in the instant and like get me an apartment or somewhere, and like he's not doing it? Or you just were like, I'm not even telling him about my situation, I'm doing it on my own?
Both.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I had those moments of both, right? I think my bitterness came from knowing that financially my dad could have gotten me out of that situation in a heartbeat.
Easy. Like that.
Right, but my pride wouldn't allow it.
Gotcha. Okay.
Because I had gotten myself into that situation. Yeah. You know, but again, that's a tough one. It wasn't his responsibility. Yeah. You know, like it wasn't his responsibility. You know, that's big of you.
You've shown it a tremendous amount of accountability though, because there's a lot of people, and I think that's kind of what's wrong with society today, 18, 19, to say, no, my parents should have done something or did more. And, you know, again, you've kind of alluded to, you really didn't give your dad the opportunity to kind of even be involved like that, to the extent that he could have, right? And
but I think part of that came from watching women expect that of my father. My mom, you know, my ex-stepmother, like women that he would date, like I watched women just expect money from him, and I didn't like that. I didn't.
You've lived a very interesting. I think you've seen the best and worst of men and women.
Oh yeah, no, my friends always joke that I should write a memoir, because this is like literally we're just touching the iceberg of like some of my experiences, but it is what has made me. You know, but yeah, there were times where I was, you know, driving out to Clearwater after working a 15-hour day to pick up my drunk, abusive ex because his friends would call, you know, and tell me they've wandered off somewhere after beating somebody up, come pick them up. And I'd be driving, you know, exhausted, and just be like, what am I doing? Why am I here? Like, why have I chosen this life for myself? Like, I knew once I got this person in the car, the abuse I would face on the way home. Yeah. You know, so like it was this really weird place to be. And, you know, of course there was a moment where like it came to a head, right? Where I had to make a decision. You know, people were starting to visually notice the abuse. Like, people that weren't in my circle, because people in the circle knew, and they were like having conversations with me. Even people that were technically closer to them, you know, were even starting to be like, they pulled a gun on you the last time they were drunk. You know, like, we're not sure what's going to happen. Like, you really need to start thinking of like an exit strategy, there was one family event where my brother and my grandmother saw bruises, and like that started to become a lot more common. And so that is kind of when I started to tell myself, like, okay, like, I'm not willing to lose my life over this. Like, this has gone way too far. Like, I'm not, like, proving this point to my dad is not worth my life. Yeah. He wins. I'm gonna, gonna wave the white flag. Yeah. Like, this is enough. And then, you know, there was a day where, you know, my partner at the time got drunk and literally threw me through the, what do you call it? The drywall of our house. And I'm literally sitting back inside the wall of our house or the trailer. And I'm just like, okay, I'm done.
Is like, this all going on with people watching too?
Yeah. Yes. And I'm just like, okay. And I waited until they passed out because they always did. And I grabbed my stuff and I left. And that was it. That was cut ties, done. And, but I still wouldn't go home. I still didn't go home. I went and I couch surfed until I could get my own apartment. And I did. I went and got my own apartment. So I still wouldn't go home. I know. I told y'all I'm stubborn. I'm very stubborn. But I think now that it's stuff like that. And my dad knows all of this now, by the way. Like me and my dad are very close. Like talk every single day, see each other, at least once a week, if not multiple times a week. So he knows everything about my life at this point.
Yeah.
So, but like now it's almost something that he in turn respects about me.
Yeah. Well, it's like the stubbornness is a blessing and a curse.
Yeah.
Because your dad was probably stubborn. Like, okay, I'm going to make this happen.
Oh, she wants to be like that. Well, I'm not going to call and bail her out if she's not going to call and ask for my help. Yeah, it probably worked both ways.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah. Wow. So then you couch surfed, you got your own apartment. I'm assuming you were able to kind of just get away from the abusive partner. Did it kind of end that night, or was it?
Yes. In terms of like relationship wise, yes.
Okay.
They would continue to like reach out and harass consistently forever until a couple years ago, unfortunately, their addiction caused them to pass away.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that was the best decision that you probably ever could have made. I don't know if you know the young lady who was responsible for getting me and my wife together. She was in a similar situation, and I think that she just always, unfortunately, she had children with this person, so it's a little bit more difficult of a situation at that point in time, because obviously she was trying to have her father be in the life, and I think even like the escalated actions, right, started getting similar to your situation, like, oh, and maybe in her mind it's like, he would never do this or this, and then it just keeps escalating.
You make excuses.
Exactly. It keeps and it's crazy because he did get arrested one time for kidnapping and whatnot, and she decided to drop the charges, and like even just that decision alone, like she probably would still be here today too. So it's very tough. It's a tough situation to go through that, and so it's very admirable of you that you were able to get out of that situation, and not let your pride get the best of you. So after you got the apartment, at what point did you call your dad, or like when did you guys kind of rekindle, I guess?
Yeah. So, I mean, it was kind of a slow process. We had been in touch. We had never essentially been like estranged, but it was a few months. I stayed in that apartment for a little while. And then at some point after talking to my dad, we had decided that it would be smart for me to move back in with him. I wanted to save some money. I wanted to find a better job. At the time, that wasn't really happening for me. And so because I had gotten myself out of a bad situation, and, him and I had agreed to some new terms, we had decided that I could move back in with him for a short period to kind of get my life back on track.
Yeah.
So I did that, and I was very thankful for that time to kind of reset. And I did. And, although grinding, so to speak, wasn't really the path he wanted for me, that was kind of the path I then set my sights on. I had gotten some management experience at Panera, and I decided that I could start from the bottom anywhere and work my way up and become successful that way. And that was kind of what catapulted me to where I am today.
Interesting. Okay. Do you think, God, I lost my train of thought.
Did you just have brain surgery?
Yeah, I think I did. No, so that's what I was going to say. man. Okay. Yes. No, I'm sorry. So yes, your dad, you moved in with your pops, and that's what I was going to say. I was going to talk about how you did, like, the role that your dad played in that situation was the role that the parent should play as a safety net, right?
Right.
A lot of people use their parents as hammocks.
Right. Yeah. No.
and it's like, no, your parents are there for if things go left.
Correct.
I'm there to kind of help you, like, get back on your feet. But you're an adult. And
they're the parachute.
Exactly.
They're never the plane.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
I like that.
And that is kind of how, you know, whether he necessarily instilled that in me or not, like, I wanted that for myself.
Yeah.
Like, that was me holding myself accountable, you know, and there was this misconception, I think, of me, and there was always this stereotype of me that I was trying to fight my entire life of, oh, well, you have this rich dad, you have this wealthy dad, like, your life is so easy, you know. And I think we've just kind of gone over the tip of the iceberg of a lot of the trauma and difficulties that I faced growing up. And my life wasn't always easy. Was I privileged in many ways? Yes. And did that help me get through a lot of those things? Of course. And I don't deny that, you know, but it's not like I had a rich parent who just gave me everything and who spoiled me and everything was a handout. And when I did wrong, oh, there was daddy to save me. And there was his wallet to open right up. It wasn't like that. It was very much like, no, you made a mistake and you need to learn from it and you need to figure it out. And I'm not going to be the person who can always bail you out. One thing that my dad always said to me that to this day, you know, I live my life by is it's okay to make mistakes and it's okay to make big mistakes, but you only make them once.
Oof. Yep.
Period. And so when I made that big mistake once, that was it.
Yeah.
And I've held myself to that. And I think that I've held myself to that to me, what I consider a big mistake. Whether that be in my professional life or my personal life. And to me, allowing my pride and my assumptions of how my dad would react and people get in the way of my relationship with him or my own personal goals was a big mistake.
Yeah.
And I haven't made that mistake again. Now, you know, my dad is everything in terms of, like, before I make a decision, I'm talking to my dad. You know, before I make a move, I'm talking to my dad. Like, when it comes to work, like, hey, Dad, this is what's going on at work. Like, what's your advice? How should I handle this? How should I have this conversation with this person? You know, before I have bought my homes that I have purchased in my life, what do you think about this? Is this a good deal? Am I getting a good interest rate? Like, is this going to be a good investment? You know, like, I am using him the way I think he meant for his children to use him. And it's not for his pocketbook. It's for his experience.
Absolutely.
It's for all the hard work that he put in his life. And that is how I am going to be successful. And that is how I am going to reach this better life that he wanted for his children, even though it wasn't necessarily the path that he wanted for me.
Yeah. Well, it's even deeper than that too. It's like you don't have the thing like, I got it all figured out, right?
Oh,
You're still able to humble yourself and say, you know what? Like, I'm gonna seek advice.
Yeah.
I'm gonna seek advice from someone who's done it, and I'm gonna, you know, get all the knowledge I can to put me in a better situation.
And at no age and at no point does one person ever know it all.
Know it all. Yeah.
You know, my grandmother, his mother passed away a year ago. And he spoke to her every day, and that was his person, you know, and she was not somebody who was, like, financially successful or wealthy. You know, she was very humble and she had a very humble career, and, you know, but in terms of advice and life advice and how to raise children and how to deal with some of his issues that he struggled with in his lifetime, like, he would always turn to her, you know, so he always sought advice.
Yeah.
You know, and that is something that I saw him do time and time again, you know, is reach out to those people who had knowledge, and not try to do it all on his own and think that he had it all or knew it all. You know what I mean? So, but again, it was always like watching him do. Right. And like setting that example and not having to be somebody who boasted or made it seem like he always had it all together.
Yeah. No, I appreciate you sharing that. And then just like a lot of the misconceptions that, you grew up in a wealthy family, like your life is good, right? And I think you've exposed some obviously some daunting things that you've gone through, some traumatic things that you've gone through, not just with what happened in college, but I know you just recently lost one of your best friends, your brain surgery. I mean, so really what I want to ask you, Haley, is like, how do you go through these things and still have that mindset to continue to move forward? And what could you kind of, maybe even tell the audience, like, hey, if you're in this sunken place or stuck, or you've gone through something similar, whatever trial or tribulation it is, what would you tell somebody that's watching now to kind of, maybe give them some more encouragement to continue to move forward?
So I would say that I probably wouldn't be able to answer this question a few months ago. I think I have an answer now.
Okay.
But the last few years have been hard. I almost immediately starting a new job, kind of the career that all of this story that we had just talked about led me to, this success of, finally working my ass off to have a job that gave me the financial freedom that I had been looking for, and kind of the recognition that I was looking for, without having a college degree, and, being able to make my dad proud. Almost as soon as that started, my best friend got diagnosed with cancer that then kind of quickly escalated to terminal, and I was one of her primary caretakers. So I really had to walk that walk with her very closely. She had just had a baby, and then by the time she passed away, her baby was 1. Her death was very quick in terms of the terminal diagnosis. It was within about 5 months, and we just thought we had more time. And then a few months later, my grandmother passed. And then in less than a year, I'm getting a diagnosis of a brain tumor. Your wife, who is my wonderful boss at work, went on maternity leave. You guys had your beautiful 3rd baby. And in that time, I had to step into her shoes in between losing my best friend, my grandmother, and before my brain tumor diagnosis. And a lot happened at work during that time. So I was working crazy hours, and it was really stressful. I'm very thankful for that time because I got to shine at work. And but it was a lot during that time period to have to be grieving and then really not have a chance to take a step back. Usually that's when people would take a moment at work to maybe just lay low after going through something like that, when I really had to take a step up. And then as soon as she came back from maternity leave, that's when I got my diagnosis. Then I had to go out and have surgery, then had complications, had to have a second surgery, and now I'm dealing with some permanent deficits from the surgery. So I would say I was in a really dark place for a long time. I didn't know where I was going to get that strength from. For a little while, I was in a place where I didn't understand what I did to have to go through all of this back to back. And even though, I think what I ended up having to understand through a lot of self-reflection was, that's kind of me making all of that about me. My best friend's death is not about me. It has nothing to do with anything I did. My grandma's death is not about me. My brain tumor, although it's my body, it's really not about me either. My surgeon even told me it's a no guilt tumor, meaning there's nothing I did. There's no, it's not because I smoked cigarettes when I was younger or drank too much alcohol, or there's nothing genetically my parents gave me. There's no karma that is involved in any of this. They are just things that happened in my life. And if I give up now, if I stop now, then my best friend, who, when I tell you guys, when I say best friend, that is not a term that could come close to describing our relationship. I mean, we had been best friends since I was 17. We did everything together. We were, joked around that we were platonic soulmates. I mean, we had planned our lives together. And to have that person ripped away from you so suddenly, what I had to tell myself was that if I stopped now, if I let myself just sit and wallow in this hole of misery and blew up everything that I had worked so hard for, I would be doing her a disservice. And that kind of circles back around to what I was talking about in accountability at the beginning, where accountability is more than just, oh, you know, I want to wake up early every day, so I'm going to hold myself accountable to wake up early every day. No, I am accountable to the people who love me.
Wow.
I'm accountable to her because she loved me and she believed in me and she brought me so much happiness. And she's no longer here to do that. You know, her life was cut short, but mine's not.
Yeah.
You know, my dad who loves me, who gave up so much for me, who sacrificed for me, I'm accountable to him. So I get up every day and I hold myself accountable in my actions to be the person who makes them proud. You know, so that the people who are still here, who are in my life, want to hold themselves accountable to be in my life.
Yeah.
So it's like this circle, right? You know, and so like to me, it's not so much anymore about the accountability of like the mundane daily things. Like, and I told you like earlier, like my definition of success and accountability, like all of that has changed because of what I've gone through the last 2 years. Before I probably would have said like, you know, I want a fancy house and like I want like to drive a fancy car and, you know, and it's not necessarily because I was like so focused on the material things. But that just meant I was like reaching the different heights,
milestones,
and like I was going to be comfortable in life. That's changed.
Yeah.
Drastically. Success now to me is much more about peace. Because my peace has been stripped away the last 2 years and I don't know what it's like anymore.
Yeah.
And so now success to me is peace and finding that peace and keeping that peace.
Deep.
Every single day I feel the pressure. Double up the work, let's make it extra. Working so my mother get a rest, yeah. Working like I never knew I'm best, yeah. Every single day I feel the pressure.